We are having the conversation as we are joined by Chairperson Dr. Rita Pemberton and Mr. Lawrence Arjun, a committee member for the members, or rather, are members of the Cabinet-appointed Statues, Monuments and Signage Committee. I am very, very pleased to have you join us this morning because this is an important conversation, so thank you for making the time.
Thank you for having us.
Necessary conversations that we have tried to involve the public in, reminding them that on the 28th of August, there will be the actual meeting where the public can be part of the consultation. But for those who are still unaware, uncertain, as Chair, Dr. Pemberton, could you tell us what is the purpose of the Cabinet-appointed Statues, Monuments and Signage Committee?
The purpose of the committee is to help to garner public views on these very important issues, signage, monuments, and there has been also calls from different people, different groups, about whether some items should be elevated to the status of a monument or should be removed. So, there's strong sentiments and some messages have been sent to the authorities, and so government has seen it fit to establish this committee to try to formulate. Our role is to try to make a recommendation to the government as to what would be the best way forward with this issue. So we have organized with ourselves, excuse me, and
as Lawrence will add, how many persons and groups as well? Because that was my next question. You did mention that you've heard from people already. So I take it that there has been actual activity already. So Lawrence, give me a little bit of insight into what sorts of interactions have you been having and with whom?
Sure. So to build on what the chairman said, the purpose of the committee is to present a policy, a national policy for consideration by the government on the placement and removal of statues, monuments, and the signage in Trinidad and Tobago. Looking at how things that are recommended to be removed are treated and what goes in their place. To date, we've met with over 43 stakeholder groups, because for us, we want to get as many views involved in this process as possible, so that the policy really represents us as Trinidad and Tobago and what the key stakeholders want. Some of the groups, and I'm going to check my list to make sure that I don't miss anybody. I'm not listing all 43, but some of the groups include National Archives, National Trust, National Museum, the different city corporations, Port of Spain, San Fernando, the Cambule Movement, Pan Trinbago, Emancipation Support Committee, Interreligious Organization, Hindu Women Association, National Women Muslim Women's Association. The idea is to get everybody's views involved in this. We also have open call for written submissions, and to date we've received about 150 written submissions, either via email or through the online form. So it's clear that Trinidad and Tobago has a lot to say about statues, monuments and signage.
I'm not at all surprised that we have a lot to say. The challenge for me often is that what we have to say is not necessarily well-rooted in thought or research. And it's interesting to hear that these groups that are represented exist in some cases, because sometimes we don't hear from them very often. In other cases, we may hear from groups when negative things have happened. So I think this is a bit of a proactive approach, if you will, considering that some of these things exist already and need to be changed, but we're having the conversation about putting things in place for future. So then let's talk about we the people, the average citizen who may not be a part of these groups or know they exist. How do we participate, Doctor?
The average person?
If we wanted to perhaps not just contact the committee, but even become a part of these sorts of discussions moving forward and contribute as committee members, are there opportunities?
We have public consultations, and that is an opportunity. But people have been reaching out to individual members of the committee, indicating their interest in and desire to participate. So it is not a dead subject by any means. Even though people are not vocal about it, there are strong, very strong sentiments across the country.
That's good to hear.
Definitely. And we have the Trinidad consultation that is happening on Wednesday. This Wednesday, 28th, at the auditorium at the Government Plaza. That is on Richmond and Ajax Street in Port of Spain. That is from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. on Wednesday.
Right.
But again, the call for written submissions is open, so people can submit via email to committeeonmonuments@gov.tt, or they can find us on Facebook and Instagram, TT Statues, Monuments and Signage, and they will get links to the online form for submission and more information of how they can email their submissions or drop or mail in their submissions.
Right, because we also have to consider the persons who are not going to go online. But we are largely digital, so will this also be live streams for persons who can't physically come to this space?
Yes, it's been a live stream on TTT.
Oh, right, okay. She says you should know that. But it's important that we make sure that we enunciate all of these small details. So, of course, there will be information on your screen right now that you can take note of so that you can tune in to the live stream. And in terms of the public consultations planned for Trinidad, we have it covered.
Yes.
What about Tobago?
So there'll definitely be one in Tobago. We will announce the date, time, and location for that after the Trinidad public consultation.
Now, once the consultation is completed, in terms of the public part of things, what is next, Doctor?
Well, we have to go through the comments and the suggestions of people, and we have to use what we have in front of us as a means to formulate these recommendations that we have to give to the government. So it's going to be strongly based on the evidence provided by the information that we have before us.
Now, you have been, among many other things in terms of your career, an author, and much of that has encapsulated a lot of our historic Afrocentric culture altogether. Now, we have books, therefore, as a way to preserve our history and our heritage. When we talk about monuments, street names, and things of that sort, do we see any sort of opposition to it altogether? Would people perhaps sometimes suggest, well, maybe we should just put them in history books or books altogether? Have we had those sorts of comments?
No. The comments have been, they need to be put in books. You know, you go to school and there's no explanation. People don't know a lot of things about what is happening around them with respect to naming and signage. They don't know. And in some places, you know, you pass streets with some very interesting, very historic names of historic figures, and the people around don't know. So that is something that needs to be corrected. But in our interviews, one of the comments that really came across very strongly is the system of education.
I can imagine.
And what is required. We have a system of public education based on a regional examination, which in its organization does not, to my mind, give sufficient attention to some of the smaller units of the region. And so that people go through the system and they have done some history, but they don't get enough about themselves, one. And there are many students who go through the system with no history at all. And that is the very sad part of the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So perhaps coming out of this, more than just the changes to the monuments and the names of streets and so on, we may see some changes to our history books, is what I'm hearing.
Well, we could make it in the history books, yes. I mean, there is a fair amount of information around. There are certainly some deficiencies in terms of coverage of significant persons and events, but the textbooks, you see, the textbooks are directed towards the examination. And if the syllabus is not sufficiently comprehensive to include the various features and, you know, and factors that people consider important in communities, then the information is not out there. So there has to be, in addition to shows and coverage by feature coverages and so forth, we have to have a system in the schools where this information is put out there.
Now, Lawrence, you have worked very closely with quite a number of youth entities, being the chair one yourself, in terms of the input in a way that will benefit next generations, I'm sure that is an interest of yours. How does that translate for us, though?
Definitely. And, just building on what Dr. Pemberton said, coming out from our consultation so far, our meeting so far, that education point has been repeated by all of the stakeholders who we've met with, but also the use of technology. How are we integrating technology? How are we integrating education, not just in formal curriculum, but how do we now, while we are trying to preserve and showcase and tell the story of Trinidad and Tobago through statues, monuments, and signs, how are we leveraging our overall system of education, not the education system alone, but national system of education and technology to really educate people? And how are we ensuring that there is holistic consultation for decisions? Those are some key recommendations that are coming up. How are we leveraging young people to understand the story and to tell the story where they are at in the different spaces where they are at, without going into too much of what might be in the report? But we know where young people are at. Young people are in the digital spaces, and how are we now translating our culture into the digital spaces for them to connect with, but then tell the story. So I think there's going to be a lot that is coming out on the point of inclusive consultations. This consultation, this process is a start and a step in that direction.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled that you guys have joined us this morning to give us this insight and sort of reinvigorate the interest. I have had it, but probably by virtue of work. Other persons may feel far removed because usually we have a lot of decision making that we only see the results of. So in this case, we have the ability to participate. We have the ability to become future contributors or current contributors as participants, and then we will get the actual derivatives that we can put into action in the near future. Do we have dates or expected time frames that these reports or findings will be shared, Dr. Pemberton?
Well, we will try. But, the numbers of papers that we have to deal with, the contributors, as we speak, it's increasing. So by the time we go back, we would be past the 110 or 111 that we left it at last night. So it will take us some time to be able to digest this and get it in a form presentable in terms of recommendations to the authorities. But we have stimulated, I would say, a fair amount of interest. We have had people make suggestions as to persons who they think at present are not recognized and would like to have them. So we have to go through those names in terms of our recommendations as well.
Beautiful stuff.
And to add to what the chairman was saying, a lot of work has been done on this topic. There are a lot of interest in this topic, a lot of interest groups, a lot of people have been putting in sweat and the tears into this topic of statues, signs, and monuments, because it's part of our national identity as a people of Trinidad and Tobago. And it's a chance for all of us to have a say in what we want people to see from us, what they want people to know of us, and the values and the ideals and the vision that we have and we want to set for Trinidad and Tobago.
No, in addition to that, what we see of ourselves, what we think of, what I think of me, I don't want to go down the street and see a name that is so very negative that I say, that's not us.
Definitely.
We want elevating things for the society.
Then let me thank you both for not just making the time this morning to chat with us and appraise us of the intentions of the committee, but also for putting in the work as committee members and, of course, chairperson. So thank you very much to no stranger to the Now Morning Show, Mr. Lawrence R. June, and Dr. Rita Pemberton, the chairperson of the Statues, Monuments and Signage Committee, that will be giving us appraisals pretty soon as they continue with consultations. Remember, this Wednesday, the 28th of August from 5 to 7 p.m., you can go to the Auditorium Conference Center to participate in person. It will be live streamed right here on TTT, and we will check in with the committee at a later date. But for now, we thank them for joining us here on the Now Morning Show. We take a break and come back after these messages.
So it's